Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Klickitat and Skamania County's 2020 Virtual Candidate Forums. Norma?
Good evening and welcome. We're recording tonight's forum. I am Norma Benson, a member of the leadership team of the nonpartisan League of Women Voters of Washington, Klickitat and Skamania Counties at-large group. The League of Women Voters of Washington, Klickitat and Skamania Counties at-large group, along with the Skamania County Pioneer, is sponsoring this, is pleased to present to you the candidates of the Skamania County Commissioner, District 1, Richard Mahar and Jeremy Bechtel. Ever since the founding of the League 100 years ago, the League of Women Voters has been a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. As a league, we do not support or oppose candidates, factions, or political parties. The League's mission statement is empowering voters, defending democracy. The vision statement is we envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. This forum is an opportunity for these candidates to present their views and positions so that you, the voter, can make a more informed decision when you mark your ballot. The State League is also sponsoring other forums around the state for other state offices. You can find up-to-date information on the state's website, LWV-KS.org. The League also sponsors an online voters pamphlet with candidate and issue information at vote411.org. Most importantly, in order to vote, you must be registered to vote. You can do that online or at an elections office near you. Our Vote 411 site has more information. And now to get into the forum, I introduce our moderator, Tammy Kaufman, who will briefly explain the forum procedures. Tammy has been active in both Klickitat and Skamania counties since moving to the area in 2008. She is the past president of the Rotary Club of White Salmon Bingen, has served as a volunteer firefighter and EMT, is a charter member of the One Gorge Bi-State Regional Advocacy Organization, and currently serves as the Skamania County appointee to the Columbia River Gorge Commission. Thank you, Tammy, for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Norma, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome to both of our candidates this evening, Mr. Richard Mahar and Mr. Jeremy Bechtel. Welcome both.
Thank you.
So the candidates this evening have received the ground rules for tonight's forum in advance and have agreed to abide by them. For the audience, here are a few of our guidelines. The candidates did not receive our questions in advance. The first set of questions were written by the sponsoring organizations. We'll then ask questions from the public that were submitted in advance of tonight's forum. The candidates have agreed to stay on topic and will have 60 seconds to respond to each question. We will alternate which candidate answers first, and I will repeat the question to each candidate. Each candidate has been given one challenge card. At the conclusion of a question, after all answers have been given, a candidate may address the moderator by raising his hand and verbally stating that he would like to use the challenge card to follow up on something that another candidate said. This is the only time this evening that an interruption by the candidate is allowed, and only to me, the moderator, to make sure that the challenge is heard and addressed before moving on to the next question. The challenging candidate will have 30 seconds to state the challenge, then the challenged candidate will also get 30 seconds to answer the challenge. Each candidate will receive only one challenge card to use during the entire forum. We will have the timekeeper visual to all participants. The timekeeper screen will go red when the time is up. If necessary, I will interrupt a candidate to complete their sentence and then discontinue their answer once the allotted time has been exceeded. So that we can all focus on the candidates during the forum, the webinar chat function has been disabled. If you have any questions, please email the League of Women Voters at the address on your screen, LWV-KS@LWVWA.org. As with everything else right now, we are learning how to modify traditional in-person events to virtual ones. The League of Women Voters records and retains a full unedited copy of all candidate forums. If any portion of a League forum is redistributed out of context to make a candidate appear to say something they did not say, or are edited to make a candidate look bad or in any way they did not actually look at the original forum, then the League of Women Voters will alert the media, provide the unedited video for comparison, and file the appropriate complaints with any applicable governing authority. All candidates who are on the ballot for the Skamania County Commissioner District 1, Richard Mahar and Jeremy Bechtel, were invited to this forum, and they are both here tonight. We will now have time for introductions. The order of candidates begins with the order of the candidates on our ballots. Mr. Richard Mahar will go first, and Mr. Jeremy Bechtel will go second. So now we will hear from our candidates for a 3-minute introduction. Mr. Mahar, please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are running for office.
All right, well, first off, I'm a very reluctant politician. I'm one of many people in this county who wants to simply live life and love my neighbor. Before becoming commissioner, I worked as an accounting manager for a local business, and I would write out $250,000 checks to the IRS and then hope that Congresswoman Herrera Butler and Senators Murray and Cantwell would be able to bring some of that money back to our local community. But it was always after bureaucracies in DC and Washington took their cut. And the money that did come back was always with strings attached. This seemed absurd to me based on my understanding of the purpose of tax-funded government, which should be very limited and small. But I started realizing the feds wanted a controlling interest in just about anything I wanted to do. Our state constitution says governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. The individual is the true minority. However, both Washingtons have divided the population into numerous racial and minority groups and have pitted groups against each other. And the budgets grow, new agencies and bureaucracies are multiplied, and the individual, who the government is supposed to protect, gets swallowed up into a devolving, dystopian, intersectional twilight zone. Me, who just wanted life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, started realizing the various governments were not reciprocating. So I got involved and I got elected. My platform is simple. First, responsible government. I've worked for 4 years now in a bipartisan manner with the other electeds, with department heads and managers, and budgeting to sustain, with our limited revenue streams, a county government. Also, local control. 88% of our county is owned by the Forest Service and DNR. Skamania is dependent upon these revenue streams, as we should be, but too often decisions are made for us in DC or Olympia. We have been working hard to gain a better local seat at the table to make improvements to these revenue streams for Skamania, and I will continue to do so. Small businesses and startup entrepreneurs continue to be saddled with ever-growing state and federal regulations and fees. I support increasing the freedom of commerce between businesses and customers on a local level and cutting out the regulatory middleman as much as possible. And I strongly support a locally elected sheriff to protect individual rights. Finally, emergency preparedness. Wildfires, floods, wind and ice storms, earthquakes, volcanoes, pandemics, they will throw a kink in our day-to-day operations. It's very important to have a rainy day fund. I've worked to increase county reserves, and moreover, I've worked to encourage local neighborhoods and communities to prepare and be helpful to their neighbors in times of emergency. I think self-governing individuals accountable to the sovereign ruler of the universe in strong local communities and neighborhoods, prepared, supplied, and willing to love one another is the best way to have a strong and a resilient county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are running for office.
Hey, hello. I would like to start off by saying thank you to the League of Women Voters of Skamania and Klickitat County, the Skamania County Pioneer, for co-sponsoring this forum. And thank you all out there who are taking the time to listen, to learn more about the 2 county commissioner candidates running for the District #1 position. My name is Jeremy Bechtel, and I'm running for Skamania County Commissioner, District 1. I'm running because I found in the 16 plus years I've lived in Skamania County, there is a disconnect between the citizens of the county and the commissioners that represent us. I've become weary at times, and at times disheartened because I, as many of others, have felt my concerns and issues have fallen on deaf ears, especially in District 1. I want to change how the leadership works in Skamania County by listening, truly listening to the citizens the commissioners serve. I believe that the concept of serve has been lost. I want to restore the service part of the duties required to be an effective county commissioner. Living and working in Skamania County for over 16 years, I've established strong relationships with businesses throughout the gorge in my 10 plus years as a beverage distributor. I also participated in West End comprehensive planning efforts and the formation of the Cape Horn Conservancy. In every area, I've seen firsthand what is working and where we need improvement. As your county commissioner, I will proactively engage in county agencies, businesses, and all of my fellow citizens through a truly open door policy. Open and independent minded, I will listen to your ideas, whether you're an independent, a Republican, a Democrat, young or old, have been here for generations, or are new to the area. It is critical that we work together to move our county forward. If we work together, so much is possible. I will create and honor an atmosphere that will engage residents. As a former Whitewater River guide and working in upper management in the private sector, many valuable skills have come naturally to me. I see the big picture while considering multiple perspectives and outcomes. Think and act quickly and bring people into alignment by encouraging positive action. My goal is to empower citizen activism, to involve neighbors, tap talents, and coordinate efforts to ensure the West End and Skamania County thrive into the future, regardless of the challenges that may come our way. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters and to the Skamania County Pioneer for hosting this forum. And thank you, Commissioner Mahar, for agreeing to participate.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Now we'll move on to our questions. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each question. And as I mentioned before, the first set of questions are from the League members and tonight's sponsors. So to begin with our first question, how do you think your position as County Commissioner can help small businesses recover from COVID-19? We'll begin with Mr. Bechtel.
Small businesses recovering from COVID-19. I've had many conversations with several business owners on that exact same topic. One of the biggest issues that we have is convincing the general public that they need to adhere to the COVID rules set forth by our governor. And that's been one of the biggest issues with some of the folks that I've talked to that own businesses and having confrontations with folks not following the rules. I think that what would be very important is further education, keeping our citizens up to date with the newest information. I think there's been a bit of a lack of relevant information out there to help keep our citizens informed. And I think if we can do that, we can do it safely and we can get our businesses through this and back up and running.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. And now, Mr. Mahar, please tell us, how do you think your position as County Commissioner can help small businesses recover from COVID-19?
Well, what I've been trying to do for several months now and continue to do is to get the governor to stop his emergency proclamation. Since he started his emergency proclamation, he and the Department of Health and LNI have issued pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of requirements for small businesses. And it is, it's devastated them. It's been absolutely horrible. What I've also noticed is, especially in the various businesses in Skamania, many of the business owners are quite ingenious and quite creative in finding ways of being safe and protective. I think that what we need to do is let the businesses have the freedom to be free and do that, and to stop the governor from imposing all these requirements that are going outside of the state legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Our next question. In 2019, 26% of Skamania County's budget revenue came from a mix of timber sources and federal payment in lieu of taxes, or PILT funds. What do you propose to do to reduce the county's dependence on federal forest funds? We'll begin with Mr. Mahar.
Well, because the county is owned 80% by the forest and another 8% by the DNR, I think we should be dependent upon those funds, and I think they should be paying their fair share. So I don't want to reduce our dependence on them. I'd rather increase our dependence upon them. I was told that the Forest Service, if they just paid a basic forest lands tax, that they would be paying us about $3.5 million a year. As it is through Secure Rural Schools, we are getting about $1.3 million a year. And if we could get the Forest Service to step up and pay a better share, and the DNR, actually we've been getting along pretty good with the DNR lately, but if we could get the Forest Service to pay more, we could probably offer some property tax relief to the people in the rest of the county that are struggling to pay their property taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, in 2019, 26% of Skamania County's budget revenue came from a mix of timber sources and federal payment in lieu of taxes or PILT funds. What do you propose to do to reduce the county's dependence on federal forest funds?
Well, I definitely think that we do need to reduce our reliance on those funds. It's been very obvious over the last couple decades that that is slowly drying up. I know that the current commissioners and previous commissioners have been working hard to try to revitalize those funds, but we need to look outside of that. I think those funds are definitely important, but we need to come to a realization that those are probably going to continue to dwindle. So we need to look forward to new revenue sources, whether it's big business, moving into some of the port areas, to provide tax dollars, also to provide living wage jobs. I think infrastructure is a huge part of that. It's going to be difficult to get businesses to move in if we don't have the proper infrastructure to support those businesses to look at Skamania County as a.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Moving on to our next question. How do you plan to improve communications to the public from the County Public Health Department as the world deals with COVID-19 and now the flu season arrives? We'll begin with Mr. Bechtel.
I think that that is a huge issue right now. I think there's a lot of misinformation floating around out there. I don't think that the county has been particularly done well at really keeping the citizens informed. I think that it's incredibly important that we follow the science, and then we are able to educate our citizens on what the science is saying and how best to deal with the situation that we're at now.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Mahar, how do you plan to improve communications to the public from the County Public Health Department as the world deals with COVID-19 and now flu season arrives?
Well, it certainly has been an interesting challenge as the knowledge of the COVID has evolved considerably. We have worked at our county website and county health department to get this information up, but again, it's been a bit of a challenge, and we will continue to keep that going. I do also want to emphasize it's important that the people of Skamania County put in an effort as well. But again, I think the information out there is quite confusing. If you listen to the governor and the John Weisman, the Secretary of Health, we get different messages quite a bit each week when they present new news conferences. And so it's not just the county effort. The state has to get more in line, and also the rest of the United States. I mean, the science on this is not anywhere from settled. And so people have to take a little bit of self-motivation and work on it themselves as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. We'll move to our next question. How should the county develop the Wind River Business Park in Stabler? We'll begin with Mr. Mahar.
Wow, that's a great question. That's been kind of a difficult one for me from the beginning. I tend to think that the county government shouldn't be owning property and doing that. It's not really what we're called to do. And I know for a while we had the port working on it because they have their rules are easier to do development and do leasing and that sort of thing. So it's a tough thing. We have been working on it ever since I've been elected, and we've had lots of trials and errors, and I am not completely convinced on what is the best and right way to do. All I know is it keeps coming up. We keep trying to deal with it. We keep working on it. We've had some success. We've had quite a bit of failure. And yeah, that's a great question, and it's pretty frustrating to me, but thanks for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Now, Mr. Bechtel, please tell us, how should the county develop the Wind River Business Park in Stabler?
Well, I've recently done a bit of research into that project. It seems to be a very complicated issue, especially because it's so far removed from some of the urban areas as far as workers go. I know that there's been several attempts to get successful businesses in there. Most all of them have failed. This is definitely something that I plan on spending a lot more time researching. Like I said, I have a fair bit amount of knowledge of that property, but it's just going to take some creative ideas and finding some businesses that are capable of operating in those buildings in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. We'll now begin with questions that were submitted by the public. So our next question, are you aware of graffiti that was seen in late September at the High Bridge and the Cape Horn Overlook, which included some racist symbols? What is your response to that, and what is your plan for dealing with this? We'll begin with Mr. Bechtel.
Yes, I'm very aware of that. That happened up at the Cape Horn Lookout, which I'm just a few miles away from, and I know Commissioner Mahar is very close to that as well. It's very disheartening. It just breaks my heart that there's people out there that feel like that is a necessary thing to do. It's a hard thing for the county because it is on a state highway. We do have folks in our community that check it regularly. We have folks in our community that have been removing those. It's happened several times over the last couple of years. I'm not sure exactly how to catch the person or people that are doing this, but it just kind of really goes to trying to educate people on diversity and inclusion, and it's just the ignorance that we see that causes these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Mahar, are you aware of the graffiti that was seen in late September at High Bridge and the Cape Horn Overlook, which included some racist symbols? What's your response, and what is your plan for dealing with this?
Yes, I am aware, and whether it's racist or not, the issue to me is vandalism, and so it's certainly a tragic and horrible thing to do. And if it's county property, we work to try to unvandalize it. But I think it goes back to, as far as I'm concerned, the importance of teaching people self-government, and that property, if it's yours, you have a freedom to do something with it. If it's not yours, you should not and cannot just go out and start vandalizing it and defacing it, destroying it, and all the other things that people do. So again, I look more to local self-government and encouraging people to once again understand the value and the importance of private property, and understanding property rights, and understanding property barriers, so that and it's not just that. We have people that go out and do public lands and do all sorts of things, with trails and all sorts of damage, and that's unacceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Our next question, by state law, county sheriffs are partisan positions. Would you support changing this to nonpartisan, and why? We'll begin with Mr. Mahar.
I strongly believe in the local sheriff. I am not so sure. I think that the partisan issue should be that way. I'm pretty indifferent. I would be fine if it was not that way, that a sheriff had to be listed as Republican or Democrat. To me, it would be more important just to have him give his speech of who he is and what he believes in, or she, and what it is they want to accomplish as sheriff, and whether it's partisan or not. I'm listed as a Republican, but I tend to be I have a lot of issues with a lot of my Republican brothers and sisters. So the partisanship has really been a sore bore in my soul, and I don't think it's that big of a deal it would not be a big deal to get rid of that for me.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, by state law, county sheriffs are partisan positions. Would you support changing this to nonpartisan, and why?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of our positions in county government should be looked at more as a nonpartisan issue. I think it should be, the best person, for the job. But yes, I don't believe that, especially the sheriff's position should be politicized. It should be, a sheriff is there to enforce the laws that are on the books and be a service to the community and a protector to the community. To all people in the community, not just Democrats, not just Republicans. I don't believe that Sheriff Brown really runs as a partisan position, but I definitely think that, all the way up to county commissioner definitely should be a nonpartisan position.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. For our next question, what do you think about Initiative 1639, the gun law initiative passed by Washington state voters in 2018 election, and which was recently declared constitutional by a federal judge? We'll begin with Mr. Bechtel.
Oh, that's a good one. I grew up as a hunting guide and hunter in northeastern Oregon, 7 generations out of that area. But I definitely believe that there should be regulations on the books. I actually support this bill, and I support that it was upheld in the courts. I definitely think that there's certain weapons that can do mass damage really quick. I think there's a majority of the people are responsible in using those weapons, and there's some people that aren't responsible in using those weapons. I definitely believe in enhanced background checks to keep those types of firearms out of the hands of people that are unstable or would project ill will on other people. So I support that.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Mahar, what do you think about Initiative 1639, the gun law initiative passed by Washington state voters in the 2018 election, and which was recently declared constitutional by a federal judge?
Well, I voted against it. I am against it. I supported a resolution to support the sheriff and not having to enforce it. Now that it has been approved by a federal judge, it makes it a little more complicated. However, with so many things that have been determined constitutional by one judge, another judge down the road overturns it. I know there's several layers of that particular initiative. One in particular, the idea of having to keep your gun locked up in your own home. I mean, I'm just not gonna, there's no way I would obey a law like that. I need to have my gun available and easy access. Certainly I'm gonna protect, keep it from kids, but this notion that somebody could break into my house, steal my gun and go off and do something and I'm gonna be held accountable for it, that's just insane. I do not support that at all. And I do believe in, certainly I believe in gun safety all the way, but not that way.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. On to our next question. How can the county best balance private property rights with the protection of sensitive and important environmental areas? We'll begin with Mr. Mahar.
That is a great question, and that is one I have been struggling with for pretty much all my life. And I'm not going to have an easy answer. Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess you'd have to take it issue by issue and try to sort it out. I'm really a strong proponent of personal property rights, and I am definitely less in favor of some of the more collective rights that interpose themselves on people's properties. So again, I would have to take it issue by issue. I struggle with this. I do appreciate there are common things that need to be enforced, but I would tend to always lean towards personal property rights and make sure there's a really good reason to stop a person from being able to do what they wanted with their property.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, how can the county best balance private property rights with the protection of sensitive and important environmental areas?
Yes, that's a very good question. I've thought a lot about this question over the years because growing up, I was definitely preached property rights, and but I also have a great and deep respect for the environment. Although I do support property rights, I also understand that just because you own property does not mean you have the right to destroy sensitive environments, to do things with your property that would affect your neighbors and your communities in a negative way. So there has to be a balance. And I think Mr. Mahar was correct in saying that, each one of those situations need to be looked at individually and, studied under a microscope to see what's in the best interest of the environment and the landowner.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Moving on to our next question. What are your thoughts on establishing a sheriff's posse in Skamania County? We'll begin with Mr. Bechtel.
Ooh, sheriff's posse in Skamania County. I would not be 100% in support of that at this moment. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think we have, as far as what I can see, a necessary reason to have a posse. I don't think there's anything to really posse against at this point. So yeah, I'm not in support of creating a sheriff's posse and deputizing regular citizens without proper training.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Mahar, what are your thoughts on establishing a sheriff's posse in Skamania County?
Well, first off, I would agree with Mr. Bechtel that proper training would be extremely important. One example that we had here in Stevenson was there was a Black Lives Matter peaceful protest in downtown Stevenson, and I know for a fact that the sheriff was informed, and there were other people around supporting the idea of a peaceful protest, but had it turned at any kind of a destruction of property or storefronts, there were people there in the background ready to protect. A posse simply is a body of persons summoned by a sheriff to assist in preserving the public peace, usually in an emergency. And right now, with a lot of stuff that's going on with this ACAB, all cops are bastards. You have deputy sheriffs being gunned down just for sitting in their car. I have no problem whatsoever with the sheriff trying to get as much help and support as he feels that he needs.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Our next question. What do you think is underfunded at the county level, and what do you think is overfunded? We'll begin with Mr. Mahar.
I do think that the Sheriff's Department is underfunded. I think what's overfunded, yeah, that's a tough one. I think in our county, we don't really have anything that's overfunded. We're so strapped for funds. The other side of that coin that gets tough for us is the legislature continues to pass laws that the county has to implement, but then does not provide the funds for us to implement those laws. So I guess I don't see anything really underfunded. In fact, we've been working on budgets last week and this week. And, you know, if I had more money, I'd give all the departments more money. But so I think we're all underfunded, and I would like to see more money all the way around.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, what do you think is underfunded at the county level, and what do you think is overfunded?
Well, my number one issue with underfunding is social services, for sure. I think we are not doing our citizens justice, especially when it comes to mental health. I know that we have a mental health professional that works in the county 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. If there is a mental health issue that arises outside of those hours, it takes at least an hour and a half to get somebody into the county to provide services for that. But I would definitely, you know, after studying some of the budget that I've looked at, you know, obviously Skamania County is, the whole county is underfunded. So I'd have to agree with Mr. Mahar that I don't see an area where they're specifically needing anything overfunded, but I definitely think there needs to be more resources sent towards the social service aspects of our county.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Our next question, what infrastructure improvements do you think are needed in the county? We'll begin with Mr. Bechtel.
Well, we have port areas and Cascade locks and down at the port. One of the biggest things I've learned through this process is to be able to get businesses to move in, living wage jobs to move in. We have to have the infrastructure in place before we can attract these businesses. If we don't have the infrastructure in place, whether it be just a basic power and water, but also internet connectability through broadband, it's going to be very difficult to court any businesses to make it attractive for them to move into Skamania County. Obviously, we're very restricted on far as where we can do these developments because we are, mostly Forest Service and DNR lands. So there have to be some really creative ways to find out how we can improve that.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Mahar, what infrastructure improvements do you think are needed in the county?
Well, I think I agree with Mr. Bechtel that the ports are key on this. They're trying to work quite a bit of stuff out there in the Coyote Ridge east of North Bonneville, which is a great opportunity to grow. I agree also that having better internet is a good and important thing because businesses need internet these days. I know the Stevenson is working on redoing its water treatment center. So, I mean, we have to have a ways to get rid of sewage. I know up at Wind River, we've had a couple of well issues, but the well and the power, that's important. So PUD is also involved with some of this. And yeah, I guess that's my answer there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Mahar, what economic development ideas do you have for Skamania County?
Well, again, my main economic development ideas would be set the entrepreneurs free. There are a tremendous amount of gifted, wise, and creative people. So let them have the freedom to economically develop. I don't see that so much as a county commissioner thing, other than, again, supporting the ports and the PUD to make sure there's power and water and these sorts of things for these businesses to get going. But again, I would continue to emphasize the importance of setting the people free to be creative. There's some ingenious people, and one thing I found out in this whole COVID thing is, as I've got to talk to different business owners, just to see how, well, frankly, how brilliant some of these people are.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, what economic development ideas do you have for Skamania County?
Well, I think one of the biggest struggles we have in Skamania County is broadband internet services. Obviously, we're restricted at the county level on what we can do because it's illegal for a county to actually provide internet services. It has to go through the private sector. I think that there's an opportunity for cottage businesses, meaning home-based businesses, but without the proper infrastructure to allow those businesses to flourish, it's going to be very difficult. Obviously, there's some port areas that can use some work with infrastructure to be able to attract businesses. So I think there needs to be some resources put in that direction to see what we can do as a county to make those properties attractive to bring new industry in.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Bechtel, how can you work at the county level to make more affordable housing options available in our area?
Ooh, that's a good one. I've been thinking a lot about that question. there needs to be more options for affordable housing. I've been talking to, a lot of citizens, especially marginalized citizens that are looking at PUD rates rising here soon, and just the cost of living going up without their wages going up. And it's been, there's a lot of people in our county that are struggling with this issue that may be forced to look for affordable housing. At this point, it's very difficult to say exactly a plan for providing more affordable housing in Skamania County, but that is definitely something that's at the top of my list that if elected or even not elected, I really have a lot of passion for that and want to look into that much more deeply.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Mahar, how can you work at the county level to make affordable housing options available in our area?
Well, I think the first question we got to ask is why is it not affordable in the first place? And I think if you look at the market, it's quite a balloon right now. People are, the price of housing is outrageously inflated. And I actually fear, or I'm concerned about a huge pop in the bubble again, like we saw several years ago. Another issue is the ever-rising property taxes. I keep running into people that finally pay off their 30-year mortgage, and now they're paying more for their property taxes than they were for their monthly house payment. And that's, to me, that's just not right. And that's why I mentioned earlier about the Forest Service. If they were to pay a better share, maybe we could reduce some of the property tax burden that people are having to carry. And then I think the other issue is zoning. I think we've zoned ourselves out of having a more plentiful market of houses.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Our next question, please explain how you create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment that will bring our citizens together rather than drive them apart. We'll begin with Mr. Mahar.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. Could you say that again?
Absolutely. Please explain how you plan to create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment that will bring our citizens together rather than drive them apart.
Well, again, as I started with my opening statement, I think one of our problems is we've divided people into all these different groups and racial groups and whatever kind of groups. And we need to get back to the notion that we are individuals and then make individuals welcome. I mean, we should, as citizens, love our neighbors and get to know our neighbors and welcome our neighbors. This notion of this whole group thing really bothers me, and I see it actually as the problem. And yet people keep wanting to emphasize the various intersectional groups, and I think that's the worst thing you can do. You know, the best way to reduce or get rid of discrimination by skin color is to stop discriminating against people who have a different skin color. So I'm, again, going back to the individual, it's extremely important to treat people as individuals and not as part of a group.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, please explain how you plan to create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment that will bring our citizens together rather than drive them apart.
Education. I think education is a key in this moment. I definitely believe that there is racism out there. I believe that that we haven't done a great job as a county being inclusive to all races and all colors, all sexes. And I think we can do a better job of educating our citizens, educating our public service folks in this county to look at things in a different light. There's, you know, obviously this BLM movement has come from somewhere, and it's very real. And I definitely think that, you know, living rurally, especially in Skamania County, where it's, you know, 90+% white, I don't think a lot of folks understand exactly what this whole movement means.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Our next question, what ideas do you have to reduce the county's carbon footprint? We'll begin with Mr. Bechtel.
Oh, carbon footprint. I think we've made some great strides, especially with the transit system running between Stevenson and Fisher's Landing. I definitely believe that we could do a better job on maybe incentivizing cleaner energy use at a home level. We don't have a lot of businesses in Skamania County that do a lot of pollution. We don't have those kind of industries here that I know of. So I think it really goes down to educating the general public on what they can do to personally to help reduce the carbon footprint of the county. There's things I believe that the county can do maybe in the future when looking at new vehicles, more fuel efficient vehicles, those sorts of things. But you know, mass transit and education, I think, is very important.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Mahar, what ideas do you have to reduce the county's carbon footprint?
Well, I think the greatest carbon contributor that we have is wildfires. So probably the best thing we could do would be to manage our forests better. We have gone for many years now with numerous environmental groups stopping different management techniques and you know, clearing the forest, clearing out the brush, doing some controlled burns where we can control the fires when they do come. And as a result, we get these huge wildfires that produce tons of carbon that go into the atmosphere. And had we harvested trees better and managed the forest better, I think that we would reduce our carbon footprint considerably.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Mahar, how can your role as County Commissioner bring more recycling and composting to our communities?
Wow. Well, we already have, I mean, composting would be what people do in their own yards. We do have recycling already. One of the challenges with recycling right now is we used to be able to recycle so much plastics, and that's been kind of diminished in a pretty significant way. So I'm not sure what more. I mean, we have our transfer sites that already provide recycling. We have some services, I think, that go around and pick up people's recycling. And so I guess that's about all I have for this one. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, how can your role as County Commissioner bring more recycling and composting to our communities?
Well, again, I think it comes back to education. I think the county does a pretty good job, or as best job that they can, with especially the new restrictions on plastic, especially with China not accepting our plastic anymore. But there's lots of things that can be done. There's lots of programs out there that would love to educate folks on composting specifically. I think that there's an opportunity to teach community members the proper way to compost. I do all my own composting at my property. And I think that if we can get some education out there to inform people on how they can better use their compost waste, and you know, we turn it back into the garden. So there's just ways to educate folks out there on better practices.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. So gentlemen, as we near the end of tonight's forum, we will now allow you, both of you, neither of you have used your challenge cards. And so if you would like to spend an additional 30 seconds on a topic of your choice from tonight's questions, you can let us know if you would like to do that. And then the second candidate would have an opportunity to spend 30 seconds on that topic before we move on to tonight's final question. So since both of you have not used it, we'll begin with Mr. Bechtel to see if there is a topic that was brought up this evening that you would like to voice a challenge and have your opponent address that challenge.
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bechtel. And Mr. Mahar, do you have a challenge that you would like to make from tonight's topics?
Well, I don't know if it's a challenge, but I did have something I could probably spot off in 30 seconds.
Okay, as long as it's in alignment with tonight's topics, you are more than welcome.
Yeah, it has to do with the whole COVID-19. I have taken the approach that it's a fourfold approach, that the virus is real. I've been accused of being a virus denier, which is not true, but I do see it as real. And second, though, is that it's in the context of economic devastation to businesses and livelihoods, and we need to keep that into account. It's also in the context of a governor who is unilaterally doing emergency dictates and bypassing the Constitution. So I try to keep all three of those things in mind as I'm making decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Mr. Bechtel, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, my thoughts on COVID-19, I'm an absolute believer. I have strong connections with the head of the COVID-19 task force in the state of Oregon. So I have some privy knowledge. I definitely believe that getting our businesses up and running is of the utmost importance, but I don't think it should be done at the detriment of our community citizens. If everybody gets sick, there's nobody going to be able to work. And that's the bottom line.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. So gentlemen, we're at the end of our evening this evening, and so we'll finish with our final question. We'll begin with Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Bechtel, please tell us why you are uniquely suited to fill this job.
Well, living most of my life rurally, I understand the opportunities and challenges of rural lifestyle. The greatest skills I possess are compassion, caring deeply for our community and our residents. Through my experience working with local businesses over the years, I have a unique view on the needs of these local businesses to succeed in the future. With many years of experience in management in the private sector, I've developed skills that allow me to learn how to work through complicated issues by listening to all sides, bringing different views and opinions together to find solutions that work for all invested parties. I bring people together.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Mr. Mahar, please tell us why you are uniquely suited to fill this job.
Well, I think because, as I said at the beginning, I'm a very reluctant politician. I worked in the private sector most of my life. And as a result, I have a fresh set of eyes now that I've been into the county. And I've learned several things. First off, how to try to navigate between the various state and federal agencies that often have overlapping jurisdictions and conflicting regulations. These sorts of things make county government more cumbersome and expensive than it needs to be. And so I'm able to see these things when they come down the pike. The other thing is that's been interesting for me to see is how in the private sector, how we have a payroll, and then the private or in the public sector, how we have a payroll. And in the public sector, everybody can see what everybody's doing. So that's been a great lesson for me to get in there and start to see how to wisely handle payroll at a county level.
Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our questions for the evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and our co-sponsor, the Skamania County Pioneer, thank you to both of our candidates for your participation tonight. Thank you, Mr. Bechtel. Thank you, Mr. Mahar.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, and I wanted to thank you that Tammy and your job here, and that this hour showed zero similarities to the presidential debate. And for that, I'm thankful.
Can I start screaming now?
No. Tonight's recorded coverage will be available on YouTube and on the League of Women Voters Facebook page. Please be sure to head to your vote411.org if you need any other information, and please remember to mark your ballot and return it in time to be counted in the general election on November 3rd. The Postal Service recommends that voters mail their ballots at least 1 week prior to the election. Voters who choose to use a community drop box should drop your ballot off by 8 p.m. on Election Day. The Skamania County website has instructions and Dropbox locations on the auditor's election page. Thank you all again for attending this evening. We are also co-sponsoring a debate on October 9th with the United States Congressional 3rd District candidates, Jamie Herrera Butler and Carolyn Long. And we will have candidates for Skamania County Commissioner Position 2, Tom Lannon and Paul Hendricks on October 17th at 6 p.m. We hope that you will all be able to join us. Thank you all and goodbye.
Thank you. And thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Richard.